Welcome everyone. Today is June 15th, 2022, and we are here for a dialogue with the author hosted by the Taos Institute. My name is Alex Arnold and I'm the program director at the Taos Institute. And just a word about what we do. So we are a nonprofit educational organization. We're entirely virtual. And we promote social constructionist theory and practices across a variety of fields like education, healthcare, organization development. So we believe that it's the relational processes that we create meaning from and shape the world we want to live in. So we promote these ideas through conferences, courses, workshops, dialogue with the authors like this one today. We publish books. Many of them are free for downloading on our website. Our website is www.taosinstitute.net. So I encourage you to visit our website and look at the many resources available there. We have podcast series, video series, lots of dissertations, and other great way to connect with each other around the globe. I also wanted to point out that we are a volunteer organization. So if you're so inclined, we always appreciate any donations that you can make to support our work. And that is also available on our website. So today we are quickly moving on to introducing our author today. So Bill Ash is with us to introduce his new book, Redesigning Conversations, a guide to communicating effectively in the family, workplace, and society. So welcome, Bill. And before Bill will introduce himself, I will show a very short video that he has shared with us. So I will share my screen and just wave or say something if you don't hear anything. So there we go. Sound. Okay.
We spend a lot of time toning our physical muscles, but little time toning our conversation muscles. My book is a conversation gym. Here you can be your own personal trainer by utilizing the everyday skills I offer to deal more effectively with your lives, including your career and work-life balance, education for your children, conflicts in the home and workplace, resilience, and more generally, the impacts of climate change, COVID, inclusion and diversity, and security at work. These everyday skills are from my experience in parenting 4 children, from my career as a lawyer and corporate leader, and from my formal studies and practicing in counseling and coaching. I discuss these everyday skills in the context of my personal stories and case studies, and provide many exercises for you to deepen your learning. It's never been a better time for a one-stop shop book for redesigning your conversations in your family, workplace, and society.
Okay,
well,
all yours, Bill.
Thanks so much, Alex. Well, what can I say? Thanks very much to the Taos Institute. The Taos Institute actually changed my life from when I entered a room in Philadelphia in 2010. And I was back then an interloper because Margie Brown Ash, who on my screen I can see just to the right in more light than I've got, as a PhD student, they were hosted by Ken and Mary Gergen for 2 or 3 days. And it was just an amazing experience for me. And then straight to the ICI Cancun conference to be included in more learning conversations and to be introduced either then or I think 2012 in Merida to the Houston Galveston Institute, the Canancal Institute, and the Grupo Campos Elíseos in Mexico, which was just fabulous, and to be hosted by Sylvia London in Mexico City. And hosting is, I know, very much an important part of conversation. But now to the present. But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Jagera and Turrbal people, the traditional owners of the land on which I live and write, and all traditional owners of country throughout Australia. I'm committed to honouring Aboriginal people's rich contribution to society, and I pay my respect to Australia's first storytellers. So who is that guy doing the voiceover in the video? I'm a partner to Margie Brown-Ash, and with Margie we have 4 children. We live on acreage on the outskirts of Brisbane. It's only 19 kilometres, which is amazing. And wallabies are standing guard. I think there are a few koalas sleeping in the trees from time to time. I practiced as a corporate lawyer and executive in Canada, the United States, Hong Kong and Australia. And it's good to see an old mate, Ryan O'Connell, there. We lived together in New York, shared an apartment there, back when New York was just coming out of near bankruptcy, I think, Ryan. In the last 10 years, I've gained a Master of Counselling and graduate diploma of ontological coaching and founded ARC Coaching. So that's the CV stuff, though the real me, reverting to words of Margie in her play Home, I am a work in progress. I'm all my past and all of my future. I'm every person I've ever met, every place and time I've ever been. In my more mundane language, I have been and will continue to be in conversations across many relationships, being in a never-ending journey of learning. And I relish the opportunity of this conversation today. So welcome. First, I'll quickly run through the questions, merging some of them that were in the, at least the internet invitation or description. And then I'm going to read a case study from the book to get us into an exercise. And let's decide then whether we go into rooms, separate rooms or not. But let me say, I'm also happy for questions at any time to stimulate the dialogue. I'm planning to do some things, but if I never get through them, that's fine if we have questions. And Alex, if questions come in and you think would be a good idea to ask then, happy for you to do so.
I will keep an eye on the chat, yes.
Yeah, not difficult ones. We've just had Australian elections, and I think the best thing said by a politician, because journalists always wanted gotcha questions, and he just looked a journalist in the eye and said, "Google it, mate." So I thought that was a fabulous answer. Okay, so why did I write this book? The seed was planted when I did my Master of Counselling at the same time as becoming a Taos Institute associate, telling me, I guess what's obvious, but so often the obvious is not apparent to us, that we are our conversations. They inform our relationships with ourselves and with others. Of particular interest to me was that we parent and lead through our conversations. But this seed became despair as I observed the conversations of our leaders and the conversations in so much of social media, not necessarily of our children or youth, but of us, the adults. And I asked myself, what are we role modeling? Especially as a parent, from the time, we hold our baby in our arms, our baby soaking up everything we say and do, including soaking up our prejudices, biases, judgments, and assumptions, what I call in the book our scripts, and all aspects of what I call our conversational interplay. And we'll be getting onto that. And if you've looked at the pre-reading, it's in the extract from the book there. So this prompted me to reflect on the countless seminars I attended and books I read on leadership and parenting. All good stuff. But what I believe was missing was a step before we learn the ways we are offered by experts to lead and parent and live our lives, all those great step programs and what have you. That is how we have conversations. For only by understanding how we have conversations can we incorporate all these leadership and parenting gems offered by experts into our daily lives where our practice happens, not where they're writing about this, like I'm writing from Pullenvale, but it's where the practice happens. And putting it another way, as I say in the video, we spend so much time developing our physical muscles I can do a bit more, I think, but so little time developing our conversational muscles. And I believe, in a sense, I offer a unique process, a one-stop shop book offering practical and user-friendly skills for conversations in all aspects of our lives, supported by exercises, case studies, and personal stories. So, yeah, the book's about conversations, but digging deeper, it's about noticing how we listen and speak from our listening, and acting on that noticing in the service of ourselves and others. We spend our lives, noticing things, but it's the action that is so important. And I cannot resist doing two quotes on this. And one of them is from Daniel Goleman in his book, Vital Lies, Simple Truths, and the Psychology of Self-Deception. And many attribute these words to R.D. Laing, but my sleuthing, I think it turns out they're Daniel Goleman's. The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice, there is little we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. So, the old thing, we cannot change if we don't notice. And I think in one of the extracts, it might have been said that the editing process from a book was amazing, and all my darlings went, I think. But one of my favorite darlings that went, and I kind of regret it went now, having read it again, in the editing process is this. To assist in bringing these conversation skills into your awareness, I offer personal skills, case studies, and exercises. In doing this, I seek to take on the role of the musician Pablo in the magic theatre of Hermann Hesse's Steppenwolf. I can give you nothing that doesn't already exist in you. All I can give you is the opportunity, the stimulus, the key. I'm going to help you make your own world visible. That is all. And I think if we look at coaching and what have you, I think that's just a lovely premise for what we can coach or parent. We're just going to help you make your own world visible. Oh, another moment of regret. It's not in the book. So, those of you who have written, you constantly ask, who's your target audience? You must have a target audience. You just can't have everyone. And I think my publisher was a bit annoyed at times when I just kept on saying, it's everyone. But there's a touch of arrogance there, I suppose. But I think Chris Pye, a relationship coach in Brisbane, says it in his endorsement for the book. This book is for parents, leaders, or anyone who wants to be their relationshiping best. And in ontological terms, the book's an offer. And it's there for those who accept it. And I guess Chris's summary of who want to be their relationshiping best is a good way to do it. And in this venue, I'd just like to thank Taos directors Ken Gergen, Harleen Anderson, Sally St. George, and Dan Wolfe for being so kind to take time to endorse the book. And I think it's also fitting in this forum to quote words of Ken Gergen, which is really the message in the book. And his 2009 book, Relational Being, Beyond Self and Community, was just an amazing book for me to read word for word, I think in 2010, to grow the seed planted for my book. And Ken says, whatever value we place upon ourselves or others, and whatever hope we may have for the future depends on the welfare of relationship. Without care of relationship, we also risk an ending. And in quoting those words in my book, I say they remind us how important it is to keep our conversations going, taking care of our relationships through practicing what I call in the book, conversational intimacy. Without this, our relationship becomes static. risking an ending, even if we are physically present. I use the verb relationshiping to describe the active process of taking care of each other's core human concerns, that is, allowing each other to feel safe, listened to, appreciated, and respected and valued. And I use the term core human concerns because those things of feeling safe, I know many of you, I've been a lawyer, I've been in the corporate world for over 40 years. And, you know, it really comes down for our children, for our colleagues, for all of us. All we want to do is to be listened to, appreciated, respected, and valued. You know, I love the phrase, nothing more, nothing less. I'm often asked, you know, what's my key lesson from writing the book? And again, it goes back to, you know, probably the obvious, but again, it's so often out of our awareness. Go easy on myself, take time to reflect and check in on others to see how they are going. It's, in the busyness of our life, it's often we forget to do that. And I also asked often, what's the hardest chapter to write? And there are several chapters in part 5, which were really discussing our conversations in society, because we see a world where so many conversations are fueled by our emotions. And, you know, we just don't get to the core of it, and they're hard to have. So in chapter 5, or part 5, is especially around how we have conversations on our and others' core identities. And I see these as sexuality, gender, race, and ethnicity, and our mental and physical characteristics. And even in our last elections here in Australia, one party sought to try to get votes out of honing in on a particular identity, transgender, and it was, fortunately, it backfired. But these discussions are difficult to have, and so they were the hardest chapters to write, and in a sense, the most fulfilling. So I'm going to stop there in terms of addressing the questions in the invitation. But I think that I'm just referring to the extracts of the book that were sent round, and they focused on our scripts, our conversational interplay, and 2 figures from the book, which are on the website, invitations, figures 17 and 21. And I'll get Alex to put those up when we go into having a discussion, because they really form what I call the heart and soul of the book. But let me stimulate our thinking by just reading a case study in the book. And it comes immediately after figure 17 about conversational interplay. One evening, I rushed home from work without noticing my emotions and the tightness of my neck and shoulders, fueled by my frustrations and stress from work. As I entered the front door, my listening focused on the children's noise. Margie was on the phone to her mother. I did not listen to Margie say, "Hi, I won't be a minute, it's Mum." I did not notice the "love you" Margie wrote on a card next to a glass of red wine. I did not smell the calming aromas of cooking. My body and emotions were running amok. I yelled at the children to be quiet. My body language indicated to Margie to get off the phone. I had not let my emotions and tightness of body be a call to curiosity, awareness, and action. I did not take responsibility for noticing and maneuvering my stress into a peaceful mood by listening to music in the car on the way home, taking deep breaths, or walking in the garden before I entered the front door. My listening to what was happening could have been affected by the patriarchal scripts I absorbed growing up in a traditional Anglo-Celtic household, those of the archetypal roles of husband and wife. I discussed in chapter 8 how my father was the sole breadwinner, while my mother stayed at home as the principal carer and homemaker. In this social construct, the father, as head of the household, is entitled to be cared for, with the children quiet or in bed when he arrives home. Was I trapped in this script? Did it fuel my inability to listen to Margie saying, "Hi, I won't be a minute"? Notice the card beside the glass of red wine or smell the calming aromas of dinner? I believe it did. Noticing and reauthoring this script has been my lifelong quest. So reverting to figure 17, maybe if you could put that up, Alex, if it works.
Yes, let me share my screen.
There we go. I should just acknowledge the illustrations in my book are by Steve Barkmeyer, and he's fabulous to work with. It's wonderful when someone, you just kind of bumble out what you may want, and he comes back with something totally different but fabulous. It was just really good. So in this diagram, which I said really goes to the heart and soul of the book, where the cat or dog, I think it's a cat this time, is kind of encouraged by the work of Carol Dweck, dividing fixed and growth mindsets. So we adopt a growth mindset and we get into curiosity, which I see as almost a kind of responsibility for ourselves and others. And we become aware of what we call the interplay of our language, that is our listening and speaking, and our moods and emotions, and our body, and that's our physiology and body language. And we interpret what we're hearing, what words we're hearing, or what we're hearing through the body language or looking around. And I believe one of our greatest responsibilities is to action that awareness in our conversations. As I did not exercise in the case study, if I just paused to be curious, I would have become aware of the tightness on my shoulders, my moods and emotions, and, am I being that archetypal male? As Fran Kafka said of his father in a letter to him, "From your armchair, you rule the world," which I love, great definition of patriarchy. So that's, and of course the conversations then go, our speaking then goes to another person. And Alex, could you just put up figure 21? Yeah, fabulous. So this drills down on listening, and countless volumes have been written on listening, which we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And so on the left there, where the hearing is, we hear the words and we interpret them through our scripts, our moods and emotions, and our body. So this interpretation, we speak from that interpretation to the hearing and interpretation with others. And, let's say there is Margie. I've just spoken to Margie, and Margie will then process that herself. So I'll be having internal conversations, processing this interpretation. Margie will have the same. And we could well listen to different things, if you like. We're not on the same page. And a public observer, someone observing the conversation, may have a completely different interpretation. So you've got a lot of conversations going on. And as a lawyer, I wonder why witnesses say different things, unless they're intentionally lying. I mean, this is the reason. So I'll leave it there. And how many of us are there? Should we go into a...
We have 25, including both of us. 24.
Well, look, is it worth, what I'd like, and is, if possible, what if we break into, 4 groups, say, and what do these diagrams mean for you? What are these illustrations? And it'd be great to have a conversation about that, and let's not spend long in it, maybe about 5 minutes or something, and just see whether you want to have a group present someone from the group to speak what was the guts of your conversation, or just because I see one of the purposes of these dialogues or anything like this is to get to know each other too. So what if we do that?
Okay, so I have 5 rooms with 4 people per room. Does that sound about right? Do you want larger groups, smaller groups?
Oh, look, it doesn't matter. Let's just go with that.
Okay, so you'll be there.
Let's just have, 5 minutes is not enough. Look, 10 minutes is fine. Look, let's do 10 minutes.
Okay. So yes, the rooms are closed, yes?
Oh, fabulous. Okay, so does anyone want to open up with either their own reaction or the group's reaction, and, you know, any stories that you think would be useful for everyone? Or comments or questions? Those figures are really just to stir what I love to call provocations.
Well, we had a lovely talk. We had a lovely talk. Ellen mentioned how she loved the illustrations because they were so very clear. And I think that was a kind of a general consensus that the concepts had a clarity around them, and then we could talk from that.
Well, thanks very much, Margie. And Ellen, thanks for that comment. And I think that's what I say. I think Steve was, you know how, you know, a book is really done through a village. And Steve is actually the son of a friend. We came very close to the family. And generally, I don't like engaging friends to help me with my actual work. And so I was a bit reticent, but my children just said, "You're mad, Dad, and if you don't," and I did. And Steve is just stunning with what he did. So thank you, and I'll certainly feed that back to Steve.
How you doing? Morning. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, is that you, Connor?
Yeah, hi. I have been delegated by a group to feed back a few things. Hey, Margie, how are you doing? So around figure 17, one thing that emerged around the notion of being in control and liking to control the conversation. So that was an interesting space that we went into. Another one was around how we have the filters and how that diagram may be missing the filters of the cultural norms. But actually, after a conversation around my interpretation of what the diagram is around language, that actually that was about our internal filters and our own, you know, let's say already listening, if you like, and the scripts as you call them. Then actually used this, it actually took the conversation into around the broader narrative of society, interestingly. So we went into a macro space around, you know, how is there's a lot of unkindness and intolerance in society, which then took us actually to a place around power and control in language. So yeah, we went all over the place. It was fantastic.
Look, Alex, put your hand up if my internet connection's getting a bit fuzzy.
I think, Connor, you broke up a few times, so I think that was for everyone.
Oh, okay. Yes. But let me just say, so many of us have negative views of social media, and Connor's an example of someone where I've met only through the internet, through LinkedIn, and Connor has written a book on trust, begins and ends with self, and we've had great conversations, and thanks, Connor, for attending today. I hope we get to meet in person one day. But let me just say, it's just fabulous, the things you mentioned that your group came up with. And yes, you know, control, filters, society, power, and the filters of cultural norms, which in the book certainly are discussed within our scripts and the norms of society. And I think in the extracts of the book, I give the introduction, and the introduction is actually quite meaty in the sense I discuss quite a few things, and one of them is how, to use that lovely term, it's all made up, a lot of these cultural norms and what have you. And I think one of the most, for me, Margie, in our parenting, one of the most exciting things has been to unpack and reauthor these cultural norms for our own home and our own parenting. So yeah, that was fabulous. Thanks very much, Connor and the team. That was really good.
Do you want more feedback from the groups?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I am going to jump in and I'll let my cohorts tell me if I'm missing something. We were very fortunate because we were a group of 3 women of an age. We were all teachers or former teachers. We had interesting lives in that some of us had moved a great deal, some of us had moved not at all. And yet there was a deep, deep appreciation for the fact that we were all in one world. We never got to the illustration. We just developed our relationships.
Fabulous. Really, Madeline, that's delightful. What can I say? It's really exciting. That's great. And that's why these, I'll just call it social media get-togethers, are so fabulous.
They're fabulous, yes.
Yeah. Actually, that's wonderful. What can I say?
I'd like to add that if we had had another 30 minutes, we would have gotten to your question.
It's interesting that, I don't know why it reminds me of when I was in a talk with a futurist, and he was babbling. It was all great stuff, and people were taking notes, and someone put up their hand and said, could you just go back over what you said? And he said, I don't know. I'm on. I don't know what I said. I don't know why that reminds me of that, but not answering the question, I suppose. Or I think you answered the question beautifully. Anything else?
Well, I guess I can report on our group of 3, and because I'm not sure anyone else wanted to, but we had a really lovely conversation about listening, and I got to meet Elizabeth and Sarah, who are from places very far from where I live, and it was delightful, and I think there was a shared sense of what listening is and what it can do to transform us.
Well, thank you very much, Frances.
Can I add one thing to that? I thought that something that Frances had said, we talked about listening at sort of these different levels of conversation and how we learn to listen, and how in like the macro context, in the social, political, like during the election, it doesn't really feel like a conversation because of the variable of listening and how it gets distorted or it's not a two-way thing. So I thought that it was our exploration of listening and what it feels like in different professional roles, and how, for example, therapists really, really develop that capacity to listen, which and then maybe invites being listened to. And coming from an education context, thinking about how is it that we can learn to listen as part of our design, like how can I, as a student in a classroom or a classroom full of adults, how can we all learn to develop that? And so conversation and listening are kind of these things that once you reach adulthood, it's sort of, like you said in your intro, we don't really work on developing those as a developable thing. And so I thought that was a very interesting, looking at the different levels of analysis and listening. Thanks for doing the summary, Frances.
No, thank you very much, Sarah, for that. I mean, the figure 17 and 21, I guess, I don't like to use the word structure, but a kind of a source from the ontological graduate diploma I did. But I think you mentioned the profession of a therapist. I hope I'm not misquoting Harleen here, Harleen Anderson, but it was just a pleasure to be in a couple of workshops or whatever with Harleen in Mexico in those conferences, and her offers on listening and traveling with and hosting and all this. And in a paper, Harleen invited me to do a paper in her journal. And in that, I talked about or used her concept of social occasions. And I think I'm right in saying Harleen said to me that, you know, the skills in our conversations, listening or whatever, is the same across all our social occasions. And we just adjust them for the agenda or purpose or intent of the conversation. And you mentioned therapist. In that article, I take a quote from Harleen's work about what a therapist does, and I crossed it out and put parent and leader. And that quote was exactly the same, in my view, for how a parent or leader should speak, listen, or be in a conversation. And, you know, whether you're coaching, mentoring, leading, parenting, I believe all the skills are similar. But thank you very much for that. It's amazing what triggers your thoughts when we speak. Any other?
I see Karen has her hand up.
I'm just reflecting on our short 10 minutes and the idea that this requires so much vigilance and effort, intentional effort. As a person who highly values listening, and I teach listening skills, and yet in our 10 minutes, I was so excited to talk to the two people in my group that that I became less vigilant about listening. And so it just struck me that these are things of constant practice.
Thanks for that, Karen. And oh, yes. And one of the downsides of writing this book has been, and Margie, you might have done this sometimes too. Certainly the children have, when I've, let's say, gone off script. Read your book, Dad. You know, we do, and I'm with you on that. Listening. You know, I've written about listening. It's a very big part of the book. But wow. And that's what it's just amazing. Nothing I've written in the book is new, if you know what I mean. It's just perhaps doing it, writing it in a different way, using different language. And we just hope that some of the language rubs off on us. Someone may read the book and gain nothing, but go to someone else's book and gain everything. You know, it's just what we listen to for our scripts. And that's why the scripts are so important. And I guess you mentioned, you know, I'd like to think we don't have some of the conversational traits that are going on in the States at the moment that I think you alluded to, the listening, the different layers of listening. And yeah, it's really quite profound in some areas at the moment.
Brian,
It's a fabulous conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry?
jump in for our group. Just what I thought was interesting is we had two comments about the way professional backgrounds can affect listening. Sylvia said that it's interesting to watch your evolution, Bill, as you went from a lawyer, you know, tough guy, to really, really focusing on listening. And then Jay, who is a counselor, talked about shifting more to asking very conversational questions in his practice. And he said at first, clients were sort of surprised. Why aren't you asking me a really professional question? And he was interested more in making it more conversational. I think I'm paraphrasing him correctly. Jay, if I didn't, let me know.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Ryan. That took me back to a mediation course I went to. And there was quite a well-known judge in the course, former judge. And he confided in me, boy, Bill, I'm finding this difficult. And going back to power and control, you know, as a judge, you know, all the power and control. And I just find this very hard. And I'm still working on all my little challenges of being a lawyer and all that. But yeah, that's very true. Our professions and what have you. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Sylvia is still here, but thank you, Sylvia, for that comment. It's so true. So how? Any
I want
more?
to pick up on what Ryan was saying.
Yes.
I think it was Ryan who talked about professions. Also, your preparation. Early in my education, I studied mathematics, and it changed the way in which I speak ever since then. And it's not something that I even desire to change because I find it so clear in my mind.
Yeah.
It's very different than a lot of people.
Can I ask everyone then a question? Is there any particular, just one, maybe in one word or two words, takeaways from today? Just off the top of your head, whatever comes into your head quickly, because I think we've got, how long we got? About 4 minutes or something.
Yes, we're wrapping up in about 5 minutes, yes.
I'll start, but I'll do it in 3 words. Scripts, moods, emotions, and body. All those triggers together, that's powerful.
Thank you.
And
For
several
me,
people are
I would say noticing is kind of at the root of everything.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what you bring with you into the conversation, if you're not paying attention to what's going on, it can go off. Yeah, noticing is important.
Thank you, Ilana.
other people are also putting noticing in the chat. Script.
Oh, okay.
Intentional listening.
Yes.
Compassion as the key.
Can I say empathy too, in
Yes.
addition to the script?
Noticing also, noticing in the script for me.
Thank you. If I can just go back to empathy, there's fabulous books written about empathy, and I speak in the book about my own journey of empathy, because I was brought up in a very, I don't like to use the term because they've been overused, but, kind of white privileged, entitled, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic background. And through my journey of empathy, hey, I realized there are other people in the world. And it was a really powerful journey. And a fabulous journey of learning.
I just want to say curiosity is my takeaway word. Curiosity and acting on your curiosity.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Roy? Yeah. Thank you very much, Roy.
Roy, yes.
Thank you. Just on curiosity, I think I did ancient Greek for a year at school, and I've forgotten all of it, but one thing I think I remember wrote, and I hope there are no scholars here to get my pronunciation, but reading hoi de anexetos bios ou biotos anthropo, the unexamined life is not worth living. And that was at age 16 under a tree at school. I can still remember. And, I don't know whether things get embedded in you, but yeah, curiosity. And again, I fall short all too often.
I'm really struck with the space that Sevilla has mentioned, Sevilla. the space between listening and speaking, that really speaks to me. And that's the word I'm going to take away, space.
Yeah. I love that. That's interesting to listening, because I don't think I talk about that in my book, but that idea of space and space between, I've listened to that in the past, but I didn't action it in my book in that language. And fabulous. Thank you for that. And Sylvia, thank you, Sylvia, for that.
I'm taking a word you didn't say, but was outside, because for me, what you're doing is taking these listening skills that we have carved in therapy to the outside world, which is where they belong. So thank you, Bill, for doing this.
Thank you, Sylvia. And I noticed in your comments, you've received the book.
This
Fabulous.
minute. So it's just incredible as I'm sitting here with you. So
thank you. Thank you so much. And Sylvia has certainly been part of my journey in terms of awareness, empathy, or however you like to call it. And I remember going to a school with Reka in Mexico City with a kind of workshop with women there. And it's still so powerful within me. It was really, Margie was there, but I tagged along with Margie through so much of this learning. And it was one of the most profound, for this male, it was one of the most profound, impacting workshops or events I've been to.
It's right about the top of the hour. I think maybe you want to say a last few words as a way to wrap up.
Well, I just want to say thanks. It's just lovely to hear you, and this has been I'm just going to wrap up with where is it? I was going to just wrap up. I can't find it, but that quote that I can give you nothing than what's already within you, just provocations. And thank you very much for participating and having a conversation. It's great to see the relationships within the group form during it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here today and for sharing your book with us, for taking the time to have this conversation with this group. So the conversation has been recorded. It will be available on the YouTube channel for the dialogue with the authors on the Taos Institute website. You can find them as well. And yes, thank you everyone for being here today. And I hope you enjoy the continued reading and practice. So thank you, Bill, and thank you, everyone.
and thank you, Alex, for hosting.
Thank you.
Oh yes, thank you
very much.
The Taos
Bye-bye.
Institute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.